She told me Dorian had left something out. Not a lie, he never lied, but something he had chosen not to say because he knew if he said it too soon, I would stop trusting him. I sat across from Petra Sallis in a quiet cafe and listened. And by the time she finished, I understood that the story I thought I was in had a completely different shape to the one I had mapped. There is one thing I did not tell Celeste. I want you to understand why. It was not deception, it was timing. The truth is most effective when the person receiving it is ready. If I had told her on the first day, she would have left. If I had told her on the second day, she would have reported it to Vale and never come back. I waited because I needed her to trust me enough that when she heard it, the trust would survive the telling. I calculated this precisely. I was not wrong about the calculation. I was, perhaps, wrong about what the calculation cost her. Petra Sallis was nothing like Celeste had expected. She had imagined, from the clinical report, someone frightened and diminished. Instead, she met a woman of 50 who had the specific energy of someone who had stopped being afraid and moved into something quieter and more dangerous: certainty. They met in a cafe 40 minutes from Blackwell the next morning. Petra arrived first, ordered 2 coffees, looked at Celeste when she sat down and said, without preamble, "He told you what to find. He told you where to find it. He told you about Vale." "Yes." "Did he tell you about Isobel's sister?" Isobel had a sister. Younger by 3 years, her name was Nadia. Nadia had been, for 2 years before Isobel's death, in a relationship with Dr. Vale. A relationship that Isobel knew about and hated and had, in the weeks before her death, been using as additional leverage in her confrontation with him. On the night of the cliff, Nadia had been there, not Dorian. Vale had sent Nadia, perhaps to talk to Isobel, perhaps to frighten her into silence. Petra believed the former. Celeste, when she heard this, found herself believing the latter. Nadia had not pushed Isobel. Petra was certain of this. She had spoken to Nadia twice, in the months before leaving Blackwell, clandestine conversations that Vale never knew about. Nadia had told her the truth. Isobel had been standing at the edge of the cliff. They had argued, and Isobel had stepped back in the dark, and there was nothing there. An accident, caused by a confrontation that Vale had arranged. Dorian had arrived 9 minutes later. He had found Isobel in the water and had gone in after her. He had not been able to save her. The cliff path had been too dark to see who else had been there. He had heard a single set of footsteps retreating. He had not known it was Nadia until 8 months after his committal, when Nadia had visited him, the first and only visitor he had ever received, and confessed everything. She drove back to Blackwell in silence. Petra's last words in the cafe were still in her head, spoken with the precision of someone who had chosen them over a long period of time. "He told you he picked you because of your paper. That's true, but there's something else. Something he hasn't told you because he thinks it will change how you see him. It might, but I think you should know." Celeste had asked what it was. He knew Isobel, Petra had said, before she met her husband. They were students together. He introduced them. Vale and Isobel met because Dorian trusted Vale, because they were friends. Dorian has spent 3 years in that facility being assessed by the man responsible for everything, and he has never shown Vale that he knows it, because he was waiting to show someone else instead. She walked past Vale's office on her way to the session room. The door was open. He was inside. He saw her face. He stood up. "Is something wrong?" he said. She had not planned this. She had planned to go to Dorian first to process what Petra had told her, to be measured and strategic. Instead, she found herself standing in the doorway and saying, with a calm she did not feel, "How long had you known Isobel before Dorian introduced you?" Vale went completely still. Not guilty still, something else. Calculating still, the specific stillness of a man who has been caught but is already building the version of events he will deploy. "Who have you been speaking to?" he asked. "Answer the question." He closed the door. He did not threaten her. That was the most frightening part. A direct threat she could have reported, quoted, documented. Instead, he told her 3 things in a voice of complete administrative calm. That Petra Sallis had a history of obsessive behavior toward patients, and that her clinical registration had been revoked for cause. That Dorian Ashby was a manipulative individual with documented capacity to create convincing false narratives in clinicians. And that Celeste's contract with Blackwell contained a confidentiality clause, and that if she repeated anything discussed within the facility to external parties, she would face professional and legal consequences significant enough to end her career. He opened the door, smiled. "I do hope the sessions are going well," he said. "You seem to have real rapport with him." She went to the session room, sat down. Dorian looked at her, and she saw in his expression something she had not expected to see there. Fear, not for himself, for her. He said he got to you, and she said, "Yes." And he said very quietly, "I'm sorry, I should have moved faster." And she said, "Faster toward what?" He looked at her with those dark eyes and said the thing she was not ready to hear. "Toward getting you out."